real estate is organic, and the properties really kind of have a life of their own. And you can apply the things you learn from property to property, but the situations are different all the time. You take your experiences that you've learned, and apply those principles, but how you work through them is usually different every single time.
Welcome to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers Podcast. Each episode will bring you conversations from business leaders and up-and-coming stars in the commercial real estate industry in Canada. Our guests will share their unique career journeys, passions, and advice on what it takes to be successful in this industry. This podcast is brought to you by Highview Partners, connecting people who perform in Canadian real estate.
I'm your host, Richard Costello, and today I'm pleased to introduce Mike Bishop. Mike has been a mainstay of Vancouver's commercial property management industry for the past 3 decades. Having worked for some of the city's leading development companies, Mike is now VP Asset Management with the new property development group, Third Space Properties. Over the years, Mike has been an active member of BOMA Canada, including the role of past chair, and has held positions at BOMA BC, with BC President, VP, Treasurer and Director. On the theme of giving back, Mike has volunteered for many years with Cambiando Vidas, a charitable organisation that builds homes for financially troubled families in the Dominican Republic. He's past chair of the board of the Vancouver Society of Children's Charities and is a director of Chimo Community Services Society. Mike holds a diploma in urban land economics from UBC's Sauder School of Business. Mike, a big welcome to you and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So I guess before we get into talking about your career, I thought we could just start by hearing about Mike Bishop in the early years. Let's hear some details that, maybe we can't find on your LinkedIn profile. So can you give us a glimpse of what life was like for you growing up? Maybe share who your early role models were and how they influenced you.
Going back to my early years, my dad was probably the biggest role model influence in my life. He worked for Woodward's for 35 years, and we traveled around quite a bit as he was being transferred to region and store to store. So I think we moved during my early years probably 4 or 5 times. But what I learned from Dad was, the importance of customer service, and how managing people was so important to the success of a business. And the other thing, because he was in retail, I got a real glimpse of how he managed through difficult situations. Not just in terms of customer service, but retail. Over the years, has had a real roller coaster of a ride, and watching it through him just kind of influenced me through my career.
What role did your dad have at Woodward's?
Well, actually, ironically, in the early years when he graduated from UBC, he was the assistant shopping center manager at Oak Ridge. Woodward's at the time owned Oak Ridge Shopping Center. Then he evolved through sales management up to store management. He was a buyer and had various different roles in the buying group and managing various groups of departments for Woodward's across Canada. And across Canada is a loosely used term because Woodward's only went as far as Alberta.
Yeah, I guess most people in Vancouver these days would just associate Woodward's with the West Bank development, but forget it was a department store.
Yeah, and it was around for a long, long time, and very, very successful in its day.
So I guess before you got into the real estate industry, were you ever contemplating any other careers?
Well, I was very interested in the retail sector, and because Dad worked at Woodward's when I was looking for my first sort of career move. I couldn't work at Woodward's because they had a policy where family couldn't work there. So I landed a job at Eaton's and went through their management training program. And from that, rolled into sales management I was there for 10 years. It was a great experience. And it was while I was at Eaton's working in the retail sector that I did get a call from somebody who was in real estate development, and they were looking to start up their own in-house property management group. And I had to make a career choice at that point, whether I wanted to continue in the retail career and looking at what was going on in the retail sector. And, if I wanted to follow my career path with Eaton's, my next move would have probably been not in Vancouver. It would have been probably moving elsewhere, likely Toronto. So it was a great ride, but the opportunity to get into real estate was actually quite enticing, but kind of scary at the same time, frankly.
So I guess, Mike, given the trajectories of the two industries over the past few decades, I think you made a good career choice. But maybe you could tell us, how did your career evolve then over the last few years?
It was kind of interesting because I got this call from Eric Carlson he was at the time, it was at Schroeder Properties. It was a good personal friend, and suggested that taking my retail experience, I could get into retail property management. Schroeder at the time was a developer of outdoor large format strip retail centers, and so that's where I took the leap. I really haven't looked back. I worked at Schroeder for a while. I went back to UBC and got my diploma in urban land while I was working there. And ironically, Eric, about 6 months after I joined Schroeder, left to go out on his own venture and started up what eventually became Anthem Properties. And after 3 years at Schroeder, Eric asked me to join him in Anthem. I was there for about 11 years. While at Schroeder, I was working with another fellow by the name of Ian Gillespie. And after about 11 years at Anthem, Ian contacted me and asked me to join his firm. And the difference that I had to consider between Anthem and Westbank was the types of assets that we were working on at Anthem versus Westbank, and it gave me the opportunity by joining Ian's company to deal with larger, more sophisticated buildings, and just broaden my experience, which is really what I was after in terms of career growth and experience. So that was an amazing opportunity. I also, really enjoyed working in the area of sort of family-based real estate investment and development companies. But one of the things that I was missing, frankly, was that third-party property management experience. So at one point in my career, I joined Colliers and had a great experience at Colliers, but I really missed that family-based real estate investment management experience, and so joined Low Tide when they were just in their very, very early years. I think I was the 5th employee at Low Tide.
Maybe tell us a bit about Low Tide for anyone that's not familiar.
So Low Tide is again a privately held real estate investment development management company based in Vancouver, in Gastown. The primary stakeholder, the only stakeholder, is Chip Wilson, and Chip's influence on Low Tide, made it really, really an exciting opportunity, but also an amazing learning experience in just a different perspective on how we approached real estate investment, because they really weren't looking to invest in any asset class in any area of the country, or even the city of Vancouver for that matter. It was very, very focused on that end user experience, the tenant experience, and the customer experience. I think a lot of that came from the retail foundation of where Chip came from, and the senior management team at Low Tide provided that foundation and our ability to grow, a fantastic property management team. So yeah, the Low Tide, the opportunity was great, working back in that family owned business, but focusing on a very well-defined market and very well-defined investment objectives.
You've really hit the who's who of real estate owners and investors, managers in Vancouver, Mike, with kind of Anthem, West Bank, Wes Group are in there too, Low Tide. Before we get on to your current role, I do want to just, I guess, ask you more broadly about what it is that you enjoy about this industry.
I think the number one thing that I like is the diversity of the experience. I really, really enjoy how the managing real estate and managing a portfolio of real estate is provides something new all the time. New learning opportunities, new challenges, and the industry is constantly changing. Back in the Anthem days when we were a real estate syndicator and we had properties all over, the United States and Canada. One of the things that we talked about a lot was, that our real estate is organic, and the properties really kind of have a life of their own. And, you can apply the things you learn from property to property, but the situations are different all the time. You take your experiences that you've learned, and apply those principles, but how you work through them is usually different every single time, which is one of the things that makes this industry so much fun to work in. I think that how the industry is evolving. I was talking to a property manager I worked with years ago, and we were kind of laughing because the industry has changed so much. We used to kid ourselves that, when I first started in this, we didn't have desktop computers. The accounting department had the computers, and they gave us a stack of reports to go through, every month, or looking at various hard copies of paper. And the cell phone that I had was mounted in my car. I could stick it in your back pocket back then. It was actually two pieces of equipment, one that sat in the front of the car and one that sat in the trunk. So it used to be that the property management was kind of a thing where we really focused on collecting rent and fixing things. That's what it was really all about. Today, it's so much more, and it's less and less about the real estate asset and more about managing the people that are impacted by the real estate itself. And by that, I mean, whether, if you're working for a development company, it's your immediate team that you're working with and some of the challenges they face day to day. Sometimes it's the tenants and some of the challenges they're faced. Sometimes it's going to be the clients or the service providers that service the buildings. But it's more and more about relationship management and less about the physical asset, frankly.
Mm. You made a comment about each building has kind of a life of its own. Like what do you mean by that? What's a good example of that?
Well, yeah, I guess a good example would be, a building where you would have I can think of Low Tide because we had a lot of heritage buildings. We had a building that had a boiler in it that was 100 years old, and just the things that we had to do to maintain that system were, it sounds silly, but it was as simple as going hitting the controller just to make the thing work again. It was, and I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but if you get what I mean, is that when you're dealing with brand new assets all the time, everything's brand new, and it's kind of like a child where it's learning and you're learning along with it, and the building is maturing and settling in. Where you're buying if you've owned an existing building, which most investors have a portfolio of existing buildings that are not all brand new, they each have kind of unique nuances and the way things operate and the way things were designed, and often buildings are built for a lot of based on a lot of different criteria. Zoning and code compliance is one thing, and budgetary constraints are another, and it's all those things that come together in the end that make that complete asset. And there's always some little nuance that was maybe overlooked, or people didn't think about, or we had to build it that way because of a code issue, but it doesn't really work in real life. So in my experience, with the hundreds and hundreds of buildings that I've dealt with over the years, is that every situation is different, and every building is different. And that's why I kind of mean it has a life of its own.
Would you like to join an industry association that develops, promotes, and advances best management practices? The Building Owners and Managers Association, better known as BOMA, is on a mission to make commercial real estate greener, smarter, and stronger. BOMA provides its members with access to exceptional education programs and events, and valuable networking opportunities. BOMA members include leading building owners, property and facility managers, and industry service providers. To learn more about the association and how you can become a member of your local chapter, visit bomacanada.ca.
So, Mike, I want to turn to your involvement in the industry association, BOMA. So I know just from following you over the years that you've had, and I mentioned in the intro, you've had varying roles. What would you say your biggest sort of takeaways are from your involvement with BOMA over the years?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is networking. I've been involved with BOMA for over 25 years. I think I haven't really counted, but it has led to some great networking opportunities and some great learning opportunities and meeting people from all over the world, because there are BOMA offices all over the world, and I really encourage people to participate in the annual conferences, particularly BOMA Canada. But the BOMA International one also provides some great networking opportunities and learning opportunities, with some learning experiences that others have had all over the world. One of the neat things in my experiences with BOMA is seeing what is now BOMA Best start in its very infancy, and from its very beginning, which was the BOMA Go Green program. And BOMA Best was actually something that started here in Vancouver with BOMA BC. As BOMA Go Green. It was really an answer to the governments around the world looking at joining at the Kyoto Accord to look at how to manage greenhouse gases and greenhouse gas emissions created by buildings more efficiently. And BOMA BC at the time had the foresight to say, this needs to be a grassroots initiative that is industry based and not government based, because if we let the government sort of dictate how we operate our buildings, it's going to cost us a lot more money and it's not going to work very well. So that's essentially how it started and grew from there. And now it's being used in lots of different countries, and it's been a very successful program here in Canada.
And I know one of the other big initiatives that's an ongoing concern, I guess, for BOMA is to try and figure out how to attract more people into this industry, in particular the property management industry. And I know you've been involved in that over the years too. So I guess interested to get your comments on this. Like as a recruiter in this industry, there's a lot of postings out there for property managers, in particular people with commercial experience, but it's ever more difficult to find people with this experience, especially here in Vancouver. And I promoted the industry for years also, in terms of, have you considered commercial property management? I think it's a great career. It's almost recession proof in many ways. But if you were in charge, like what do you think needs to happen? What would you do to try and raise the profile and get more people into this industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. With my new position at Third Space and building a new property management team, I've been more focused on that issue more than ever now, because we are recruiting for every level. And it really becomes apparent that there are a lot of employers in this sector out there looking for exactly the same roles that we're looking for at Third Space. And we can't survive if we're just, I don't know, again, it's a bad term, but poaching from each other, because you're really not generating new property managers and curating that career path for a lot of people. They're when you talk to most property managers, a lot of them just sort of fell into the role and they were doing something else, and they took a run at property management. And so, I think what has to happen, and in the West Coast, in the East Coast, and they do have some more formalized post-secondary programs for property management. There isn't much here in the West Coast. So I think we need to approach it from a bunch of different angles. And one is, frankly, from the academic perspective, getting Sauder and SFU and BCIT on that path for real estate and asset management as a career path, and less so, I shouldn't say less so, but taking the focus off just development and construction and real estate investment. Leasing's a big one for a lot of guys coming out of post-secondary education to get into leasing and the development management side of it. Very, very few of them ever think of becoming a property manager or even an asset manager for that matter. So I think we need to develop a little bit more from an academic perspective, and then I think we also need to, within the real estate sector itself, do a better job at promoting it and sort of developing that continuing education path and making it easier for people to enter that area. What I've seen a lot of is that most people seeking that type of education to support their career path are doing so through their employers. So they're already in the business, they're already in the sector, which is great. But again, it doesn't broaden that pool of potential candidates for these roles, and people thinking of it as a career choice.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, we do obviously have a licensing program if you want to become a rental property manager, or you can become a property manager for a group that requires a license by going to UBC, the Sauder School of Business. They organize that program. But what you're saying is, let's have more of a generalist sort of program for commercial property management. Yeah.
And the licensing course on its own doesn't provide a deep enough or broad enough base of knowledge. And you think if you're doing an undergraduate degree or doing even a postgraduate degree, it's several programs over a longer period of time. The licensing course is a very general program, and really it provides the legal requirement for you to manage properties as a third-party property manager. It doesn't provide a broad enough educational base, I don't think. So being licensed in and of itself is great for those companies that require it, but I think that there needs to be more. Even looking to develop an internship program on a broader basis. We've done that in the past, and just again create that possibility for people to take this on as a career path.
Well, I want to turn now to your current position with Third Space. So this is an exciting new company for Vancouver. So what can you tell us about Third Space? Who are they? What makes Third Space different?
Well, Third Space is it was an interesting opportunity. David Wessick is the primary stakeholder behind Third Space, and I met David through my experiences at West Group. So we're a value-based property development company that's really investing in the well-being of Vancouver and its people. What that really means is that we are a born and bred Vancouver-based company. We want to make a positive impact in the communities we invest in. And we really want to see the businesses in those communities thrive. Now, all that sounds quite cliche, but it's something that we've set ourselves up in our platform to really address those things in a really meaningful, impactful way.
And what about the portfolio that you have at the moment? Then is it an income portfolio? Are you developing properties?
Both. We have a base of income producing properties, and we are everywhere from Abbotsford to Point Grey. We have some more mature stock, if you will, and we have some brand new developments in the Mount Pleasant area and Mount Lehman area of Abbotsford. So it's really a mix of everything, and we've got some really exciting new developments that are going to be coming down the pipe in the next little while.
What do you think is going to make Third Space sort of stand apart from some of the other groups that you've worked for in the past? Like you're obviously hiring now, so what could somebody expect if they're working for Third Space?
I think what you can expect if you're working for Third Space is that you'll find that we are in terms of the senior management team that has been put together, very transparent, willing to look at different things and doing things differently. And the bottom line is that there is it's not an unwritten expectation. It is a actually written expectation in our values that we provided a great environment for people to communicate and be themselves.
Mike, reflecting back over your career and also like looking forward to this next chapter that you're on with Third Space, I want to ask you about a legacy, and whether you give some thought to what legacy that you're looking to create and the impact on this industry. Kind of a bit of a philosophical question, but yeah.
My legacy, I think, would be one that is really dedicated to giving people the inspiration just to continue learning and absorb as much as you can from as many different people you can. I've been so lucky with my career to, back in the day, we used to call them bosses. I think today we call them mentors. And you're working alongside. I've had the opportunity to work alongside some great people who I admire and I learned a lot from. And I think anybody in a leadership role in this industry today should take on that responsibility as well for future generations and people that are actually going to be replacing us as we move on to different stages of our lives.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think, as we spoke about earlier, it's almost essential that the leaders in the industry are taking on that responsibility for sharing what they've learned over the years, because there's a bit of a gap emerging with future leaders that needs to be addressed. So no, good for you. So I have some quick fire questions that I thought we could take a run at. You haven't seen these before, so we'll see how we go.
Okay.
All right. So what's the phone app that you use the most?
Oh my gosh. LinkedIn.
Would you rather cook or order in?
Oh, cook.
What's your favorite board game?
Favorite board game? Trivial Pursuit.
Okay. How'd you take your coffee?
Black.
What's your most prized possession and why?
Oh gosh. You know what? I haven't really thought about prized possessions so much about prized relationships, and I to be a little bit philosophical on this. Possessions are kind of relates to something material, and I think my most prized possession, if I was to call it that, would be my relationship with my wife and my family.
What's the scariest thing you've ever done, and why did you do it?
Oh boy. Back in 2018, I think it was, I can't even remember the name of it now, but it was descending down a 300-foot straight drop into a crater in New Zealand to do some cave exploring. I was with my son down in New Zealand. And, it was two things on the bucket list. One was to do that, and the other one was to skydive it. But skydiving got called because of bad weather, so I got lucky there.
I was going to ask what's on your bucket list. So are you keeping that on reserve, or have you kind of replaced it with something else?
Bucket list again. I love traveling, and I think that giving back in a meaningful way to society is also important. So my bucket list would be to go do some more charity work in a country in need. The other thing on my bucket list is to try and see the Galapagos Islands before it gets shut down to outside tourism.
All right, Mike, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for your time. Great to speak with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you for listening to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast brought to you by Highview Partners, a talent search and recruitment firm focused exclusively on Canadian real estate. If your real estate team is looking to find the best next hire, or if you're ready to make the best next move in your career, then reach out to Highview Partners today. Follow us on LinkedIn and visit us at highviewpartners.ca.